It's been a few years since I originally reviewed an Amazon Echo and Echo Dot, and since those reviews, I've mainly stuck to using the Google Assistant and Google speakers as my predominant smart assistant experience. But last year, I bought the latest Amazon Echo and Echo Dot, and in general, I've been so impressed with the progress Amazon has continued to make in this space. It's made me question whether or not I was originally wrong about the Amazon Assistant and the Echo and Echo Dot, and if Amazon's offering is just better than what you can get from Apple or Google. So let's dive into that and who I now think the Amazon Echo and Echo Dot are for. Now, the latest generation of the Echo and Echo Dot look a little different than the previous generation. They're a bit more round and wider, and that classic LED ring light that alerts you to all sorts of things is now at the bottom, and a change I overall really like. One thing I've always appreciated about Amazon's Echo design is they mark the buttons for things like play, pause, volume up and down, and the mute mic button right at the top of the device. Apple's HomePod doesn't even have a mute mic button, and while Google's does, the volume and play pause buttons aren't marked, making it slightly less intuitive to use without going through setup in the app that explains how it all works. Also, the Amazon Echo and Echo Dot feature a 3.5mm out jack. It's so interesting to me that Amazon continues to include this feature on the Echo and the Echo Dot, because what it allows you to do is to plug in your Echo to a better sounding speaker and then make that speaker now a smart speaker being powered by one of the Amazon devices. It also makes previous devices that both Amazon and Google made, which were the Echo Input and the Chromecast audio, pretty much obsolete when you can just plug in a smart speaker into a better sounding speaker. The audio on the Echo and Echo Dot has also improved a bit, I'd say, but for the Echo specifically, the bass on it is just a bit too muddy for me, and if I'm buying a speaker to listen to music on, I'd still rather buy a Sonos speaker, which overall will still sound remarkably better than the mainstream smart speakers from tech companies, although they do cost a bit more as well. The nice thing about the Sonos speakers I've bought and reviewed on the channel is not only do they sound better, but you can also put the Amazon Assistant on them. So that's a bit about the updates to the hardware design, but of course, hardware is just half the product experience. The other half is the assistant that lives on these speakers, and that's, to me, where I think the Echo and Echo Dot really shine. The area which has mattered the most to me with the Amazon Assistant is its speed. It's very quick with its responses. In my experience, it's consistently about a second or two faster than the Google Assistant. Here's what I'm talking about.
What's the weather?
The current weather is
right
55
now in Raleigh,
degrees
it's 55
Fahrenheit
degrees
with
and
mostly cloudy skies.
today.
Now, while this doesn't seem like a major difference, when you're using these assistants throughout the day for things like playing music, setting reminders, timers, asking for the weather or what time it is, all of that adds up, and it does start to become noticeable, especially though if you use multiple types of assistants throughout the day like I do. I use all three assistants every single day, and then when you do that, it really becomes painfully obvious that the Google Assistant response times are just, on average, slower. Now, I used to think my Google Assistant devices in my room were slower because I simply had more Google devices in my room, all trying to figure out which one should respond to my voice query. However, since getting more Sonos speakers, I now have an equal number of Amazon Assistant powered devices in my room as Google, and the response times remain unchanged. Even with my Echo sitting right next to my Sonos Move, both of which have the Amazon Assistant on them, the Amazon Assistant remains a second or two faster than the Google Assistant. And if you're curious, Siri for me has about the same response time as the Amazon Assistant. Another thing that has vastly improved with the Amazon Assistant that does give me a bit of pause when considering which assistant I'd recommend people should go for is general search queries. So think anything you'd normally type into the Google search bar. It used to be pretty much only the Google Assistant could reliably answer most of my search queries, often giving me satisfying answers about 9 out of 10 times. Now, I found for a lot of search queries, the Amazon Assistant actually gives pretty comparable answers to answers you get from the Google Assistant, so much so that I'm not quite sure if the Google Assistant really has a significant competitive edge in this area compared to the Amazon Assistant anymore. Now, obviously, yes, the Google Assistant is still the best when it comes to search queries, which you'd expect given that Google makes it, but Amazon has really closed the gap here. And here are just a few examples of things I've recently searched for and the responses you get from both assistants. How long does basil typically last as a houseplant?
Here is an answer from an Alexa Answers contributor that I translated. Basil in pots lasts several months and, if pruned, will grow back later.
How long does basil typically last as a houseplant?
On the website growing-basil.org, they say, basil can survive slightly longer if grown indoors, around 6 to 8 months.
How many Oscars does John Williams have?
John Williams has won 5 Oscars, out of the 52 nominations he has received. His latest Oscar nomination was in 2020 for Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures.
How many Oscars does John Williams have?
5, and John Williams has won 5 Academy Awards. They include the Academy Award for Best Original Music Score for Schindler's List in 1994 and the Academy Award for Best Original Music Score for E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 1983, among others.
What is the neo-urbanism school of thought?
From citymayors.com. The New Urbanism design movement hails from the U.S. and is a term attributed to the school of thought which emerged in the late 1980s that sought to harness principles of livability and diversity in the way urban space is designed and managed.
What is the neo-urbanism school of thought?
On the website cnu.org, they say, New urbanism is a planning and development approach based on the principles of how cities and towns have been built for the last several centuries. Walkable blocks and streets, housing and shopping in close proximity, and accessible public spaces.
Amazon's Assistant also has its own advantages compared to other assistants as well, like the ability to read out your Kindle books in sync as you read along on your Kindle, or one feature I use all of the time is alerts, when items I've ordered from Amazon have either been delivered or are on their way. Another area where the Amazon Assistant Echo and Echo Dot really outshine the competition is with smart home devices. In fact, it's so good at setting up and controlling smart home devices right now, it's the only obvious choice to go with. When setting up devices like smart lights, smart switches, or one of my newest devices, my Roborock robotic vacuum cleaner, which we've reviewed, the Amazon Assistant automatically discovered all of these devices as soon as they joined my Wi-Fi network, and it proactively added them to my home. And it does this without me having to go into the Amazon Assistant app to link my account, which Google forces you to do in order to add third-party smart devices to the Google Home app. The Amazon app also does a better job than either Apple's Home app or the Google Home app at guiding users through what types of things you can actually do with your Echo, Echo Dot, and Assistant. While the one advantage I'd give to Google and Apple is I think having a separate app, like the Google Home app and the Apple Home app for smart home control, is much more simple than what Amazon does, which crams the smart home stuff into the Amazon app with everything else, like media and music and a bunch of other stuff. Another thing Amazon has done an amazing job with is the setup experience of the Echo and Echo Dot. It's one of the fastest device setups of any product I've ever tested. And even if it's your first time setting up one of these devices, the setup experience is still very fast. And the last thing I think might just sway me over to the Amazon Assistant over the Google Assistant as the default one I recommend to people is Amazon's willingness to experiment more with their hardware design and their willingness to put their assistant on more devices. Plus, their willingness to allow their assistant to be on the same device at the same time as another assistant, which you can now see with various Sonos speakers today. This is something both Apple and Google just refuse to do, which makes Amazon's ecosystem one of the most open and flexible in this space. Now, while there is a lot to like about the Echo and Echo Dot and the Assistant running on them, there is one glaring downside I've run into with specifically the new Echo, and it's a pretty big one. The little rubber feet that help with sound isolation on the bottom of the device, they actually have produced a few marks on my wood side table, which really sucks. It's not something that I expected to have happen with this Echo, considering that I've had other smart speakers on this table before, never had an issue, including the previous generation of the Echo. Now, Rings around furniture from speakers is something when you Google this issue. It is an issue that people run into quite a bit, especially if your table is made out of wood and it's like oiled. But for this type of table, still not something I was expecting. Thankfully though, the Echo Dot doesn't have the same indents with its rubber bottom, and I haven't had any issues with it. Also, there are several things I think Amazon could do to improve the Echo, Echo Dot, and the Amazon Assistant. And the first one is supporting AirPlay 2 and or Google Chromecast for their speaker lineup. I think it would be great to be able to add in speakers like the Echo to AirPlay and Google Cast groups. Google and Apple speakers definitely have a competitive edge here when it comes to grouping their speakers together with other third-party speakers into a single speaker group. And another thing I think Amazon could improve is when the Assistant is saying something but you want it to be quiet, it would be great if you could just yell stop and it just stops talking. This is actually something you can now do with the Google Assistant. This rolled out within the past year, and it's something that I wish Amazon would bring to the Amazon Assistant as well. So back to the question I asked at the start. Was I initially wrong about choosing the Google Assistant as the predominant assistant to put in my home a few years ago? I don't believe so, but now that it's 2023, I just can't ignore the fact Amazon has caught up to Google in a lot of categories where I thought Google was superior, like with search queries. Given how easy having an Echo or Echo Dot makes smart home setup and control, the hardware design, and most importantly, the speed of the Assistant, I think for most people looking for a smart speaker in 2023, Amazon speakers are the ones I'd likely suggest. Except, since the Echo put marks on my wood table but the Echo Dot hasn't, I'd probably skip out on this generation of the Echo and just go for a Dot. It doesn't share the same bottom design and has all of the benefits of the Echo. Just not as great sound, but it's also a less expensive device to pick up and start out with anyway. So that would be the Echo device I would recommend. Now, if you're looking to get a smart speaker mainly for playing music, my recommendation here would actually be to pick up a couple of Sonos speakers and just skip out on Amazon speakers entirely. You can run the Amazon Assistant on them, but they also include AirPlay support, so you can group them with other AirPlay speakers or use them as sound output for your Apple TV or Mac, which is something I've been doing a lot more of now that I have a stereo pair of Sonos Moves in my room. And we've done reviews on the Sonos Move, Sonos Roam, and Sonos One speakers, all of which you can run the Amazon Assistant on. Now, Amazon does have a more premium speaker, the Echo Studio, which competes with the Sonos One and other speakers at the $199 price level. But given it doesn't seem to support AirPlay 2 or Google Cast, I'd still recommend Sonos speakers for multi-room audio over the Echo Studio. Sonos also has a lot more speakers within its ecosystem. If you go with something like the Echo Studio, you're really just locking yourself into just Amazon-made speakers for your music listening. Now, if you're a Prime member and you just casually want to listen to music, but you don't really necessarily have to have or care about better sound quality, then I think the Amazon Echo Dot might be the perfect speaker for you now that the new free version of Amazon Music that comes with Prime includes Amazon Music's entire music catalog, and it's now ad-free with its default shuffle mode. You can ask the Amazon Assistant on the device to play a specific song, and it'll play that song and then play similar songs like it in shuffle mode, which actually makes for a pretty decent casual listening experience if you have no interest in paying for a music subscription. If you want to check the current price of any of the devices I've mentioned here in this video, I've left purchase links in the description and comments below, as well as here in this video. And if you're looking for what to watch next, check out some of the other smart speaker reviews we've done on the channel, and you can get to all of those by clicking on the playlist to the right. Hit that thumbs up button if you like this video, you found it helpful and interesting, and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews like this one. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder. Thank you so much for watching.